Here we have all the makings for a double wall 100 pound wind-on leader. You can use mono on this setup for anywhere from probably 80 to 150 pound. So I've got some Seguar 100 pound hollow core, use about 3 feet or 800 odd millimeters of that. Obviously sharp braid scissors, sharp knife. This little thing here, anything that will actually hold the loop from closing while you're making it, and you'll see why a bit later on. It can be a shackle, anything with a small diameter that won't let the loop pull through. Some single strand wire. Now this is 38 pound, and you might notice I've got the ends bent over, and that's for a reason. I'll explain that later. Some abrasive to scuff up the mono that's going inside the braid to help it lock with the old Chinese finger trap. And lastly, the needles. Now these needles are very expensive in Australia. You're going to pay $25 each at least, or if you want to buy a whole set of them, there's $200. I bought 5 of these from a Chinese website. They actually came with a sharp end. They're hollow, and they'll work with anything from 80 pound up to 130 pound mono, and you can even get 150 in if you shave the ends off. All I had to do was round the end off. It came with a sharp end, so I just rounded the end off a bit. Now I've got a blunt nosed hollow needle for about $1. Now when it comes to the whipping, all I'm using instead of one of those expensive bobbins is a piece of 20mm 3/4 inch electrical conduit with some 10 pound braid wrapped around one end. You can use any thread of your choice. I've just had some 10 pound braid lying around. I use Gorilla Glue to finish it off, and it's very handy to have it actually clamped. You've probably seen videos where guys have got really nice bench setups. All I've done here is got some aluminium flat bar, bent it up. It's actually G-clamped onto the bench, and it has some deck rubber, deck tread, adhesive back stuff on each side just to make sure there's no sharp edges and you've got something nice and soft to clamp it to. And I actually clamp it with these hardware store clamps. Plastic jaws, nice and soft. They hold the line on it. So when you're whipping, you need to be able to hold it tight between those 2 points. It actually makes it much easier than just trying to hold it in your hand. So I found it easier just to start with the needle first up to get the hollow core open before you put the wire in. This 38 pound wire tends to push out through the sidewall a bit. So we get our bit of 38 pound wire, and now it's just a simple case of we just push it through. You want to push it through enough, so you stop before you get to the halfway point, and I'll show you why in a minute, because the difference between the two ends of the length is the length of the loop that you're actually going to be using, or you'll end up with. If you leave a lot of difference between the two legs, you'll have a longer loop. Less difference, you'll have a much shorter loop. So I've pushed on this much now, so if I get my other leg and bring it around, I find I've got still quite a bit, so that would be a very long loop, so I need to go in some more. So now we'll check again, double it over, take it back, and we've now got this much difference. So this will give you, effectively, that's going to be the length of your finished loop. So if that's long enough for you, you want to stop right now and push the end of the wire out through the wall of the braid. So we push it through in the usual manner, pull a bit through. Now this is why I've put this bent over on the end, so I can slide this down and it won't come off the end. I won't lose it. Just a handy little thing. So get your end and just scruff your end out. This is the end you've got to pull back down. It just seems to work better if you fluff this up. Put it into your wire, and then just pull it through. See it disappear in, and it should pull through pretty easily. Now as soon as you pull this end out, get the wire off it and get this end and put something on it to stop it pulling right through, because if you don't you'll end up losing it. I just put it on this old spring lock. It's a small diameter. You want something small diameter and something that won't come off. So now I can pull that all the way down and I won't lose my loop. I can pull it as tight as I like, and you're going to see why in a minute. Now we need to actually do the thing with the needle properly. So cut off our fluffy end and we get to work with the needle again. And this is where you need the hollow needle. So we work that in. So you push it up. Now you need to start scrunching this up and keep pushing it further. Just keep pushing the needle up and you are scrunching up the outer. You find it'll get harder because you're actually pulling harder on the inner as you're scrunching up the outer, and it gets harder to push through. You want to get as much as you can in, because this bit, this length here determines how much engagement you've got of mono. Now you'll actually have more than this. If I were to push that out now, you would have more than this, because this actually stretches out again when you pull the needle out, so it would be more like the full length of the needle, which is plenty, but we'll get as much as we can. So we'll push it up, keep pushing it, right till we really can't get any further, and now we've got it looking like this. So push the needle out, and this is where we can engage our mono. So this is with a 120 pound mono, which actually fits nicely in this needle. This is for light gear trolling with light sporting gear. You can go, I've used this stuff down to 80 pound and up to 150 pound. So we do the usual slide on, make sure we don't pull the nylon out until we get our mono out. Now of course we've got all that mono that's inside the needle. So we need to scruff up this. You don't want to scuff it up too far. You want all of the scuffed up stuff to be inside the braid, because otherwise if it's outside, you've got a weak bit outside. This is just to stop it slipping, the old Chinese finger trap. You don't need much of it. So now we work the mono back through. Now we can do it two ways. We can push it, or we can actually slide it up this way. Now this is where we have to be careful. We just want that mono to disappear into the inner, like that. Right, that's it. Now that's inside, and we can slide the outer over the top, and it should slide over pretty easy with this stuff. Remember, we've got all of this scruffed up here, so we can use that. We can actually just slide our fingers down and it'll go on, and you can just work all of that bunched up stuff back over the top. Here we're bunched up all the way up to that lot. We can work it down and work it through, and this is where you have to start keeping an eye on your two ends, because we've got the outer and the inner, and we don't want the outer to ride over the top of the inner. So now we need to start using the loop to get the rest of it. So we start pulling the loop through, and as you pull a loop through, you will see that your outer one will start to get closer to the end of your inner. So we're starting to get closer now, a bit more. bit more, slide it down. Try and do this so you can see it. And you see that your outer is getting closer to the end of your inner. And we've now pulled it right up to the very end. And we have the two very close together. Doesn't matter if the outer is not quite the same length as the inner. If you end up with your inner too long when you get it all the way up, you can actually cut it off really easily. Just get your braid scissors, I'll just kind of simulate this, and just cut along the outside of it. And you find you can just peel it off. Anyway, we're ready now. That's the actual done, the actual loop done, and we can give it a good hard pull. Nothing's going to happen. So now we're going to whip it. Now the gear I use for this is really simple. It's clamped onto the bench, hook an eye on one end, pull it tight, wrap it around the other end and clamp it. Make sure that that's pulled all the way down. We don't want anything loose because that's what holds it. All half hitches. And pull it down tight. Not very, you don't have to be very far up, like about 3/4 of an inch, 20mm up from where they overlap. That's enough. And pull it tight. Again, making sure this pulled down that way. It's all, you've got to keep sliding it that way. Now don't cut this tag end off too short. You can actually do something with this. So if you cut it off about this long, you've got a couple of options later on. So this is where we introduce the Gorilla Glue. Put a little bit on, starting just up past the knot. And a little bit on the mono. Spreads itself around pretty well. Now the way I do it with this is this little bit of pipe. Just actually have it doing it so you're actually sort of rotating it backwards, if you like, and it will peel off. Pull your tag end down and go over it. Now this is where your tag end will either stay lined up the whole way or it might start to stick up. So as long as you've got a few turns over it to lock it, see how that's sticking up now? Just pull it up out of the way and leave it there and keep whipping. So try and keep your whips nice and close together. This is going to look a bit weird because it's depth finder braid and it changes colour, so I'm going from white to black through to white and probably yellow before I'm finished. But you get the idea. So we just run it around, roll your fingers over it. It's not hard. You'll go off the end of the braid and onto the mono and just keep going. Do it for about the same distance that you were onto the braid, so like about 3/4 of an inch, 20mm. Doesn't have to be a long way, probably doesn't even need to be that far. All you're doing is stopping the end of the braid from fraying and being pushed back up, because if it gets pushed back up the other way, obviously, you find your Chinese finger trap doesn't work and the whole thing's going to come apart. So we're just keeping it anchored in place. Rightio, so that's far enough. Now we just do a couple of half hitches. Just do a single half hitch and roll it down. Pull it right down tight against it and then do a double half hitch. And for the hell of it, we'll just do another double half hitch. Pull it down tight. We get our utility knife and nice sharp one, cut it off flush. And this tag end that was left sticking out before, same thing, just cut it off flush with your utility knife. Job done. Just wipe your excess glue off. You now have a double wall, full length. That mono is engaged all the way up to the eye, the full length of it. So you got full double walled strength all the way, and that's never going anywhere.